Hello again, welcome back. What's that he's got? I thought we'd done spoons. No, I'm afraid we'll never do spoons. We'll never get to the end of the spoons. There are too many of them. We'll have to change it to the spoon channel. But this is a lovely spoon that I bought recently. And I just wanted to talk you through some of the points to look for when buying spoons like this, because even though there are lots and lots of these about, I rarely buy them unless they tick a lot of boxes. So I just want to talk you through 18th century tablespoons, but this will apply to lots of other spoons as well, and just look at the condition and the things to look out for, and possibly, if we've got time, make a broader point about condition in general, but I'll try not to waffle on too much. Now, first things to say, this is an entirely hand-wrought tablespoon. That is, it's raised from an ingot of silver, and the bowl is hammered out, the stem is hammered out, and you use dies to affect the pip on the back and the tip of the stem, but it's all hand hammering. So it's an enormous amount of skill just to make a simple tablespoon. This is Hanoverian pattern, which is where the stem turns up here. You have this little ribbon pip. And the Hanoverian pattern, broadly, although there are a few very rare earlier examples, is broadly 1710 to 1715. It comes in and it goes out between 1760 and 1765 when it's replaced by Old English pattern. But that doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually as fashions change over a number of years. And of course, all these styles that you look at historically, once the Victorians get involved, they become revived again. So just because you're seeing a spoon of this pattern, it could be made in the true period, 1710 to 1765. It could be made in 1820, it could be made in 1890, it could be made in 1950, because it's a very popular pattern. This is the sort of classical Georgian style. Now, what do we look at or look for with a good tablespoon? First thing is the bowl. You want a lovely bowl. Now, this is, and I'll angle it so you can see it, this is the correct shape. This sort of, it's slightly narrows, but this sort of very egg-shaped bowl. And the key thing with this is that it's in good condition. Because obviously you use spoons and they begin to wear. Now, they will sometimes wear at the sides here or at the tip. This has had use, and originally when the silversmith made this, he would have made this lip here thicker. They would have beaten it slightly thicker than the rest of the bowl because they knew it was going to take wear over a number of years, and that allowed that wear to happen without deforming the bowl. Always very nice if you get the thick original lip there, but that's extremely rare. The next thing you have to look for is that this shape is correct because it's original and not reshaped or rehammered or reworked. So the thing you want to do is you want to turn the spoon that way, and you'll see that that is absolutely flat. Now, if you have a bit of wear to the edge of a spoon or to the tip of a bowl, or anything's happened to it and it's been reworked, what will happen is it will distort the silver in one direction but also another. So if you achieve this shape, the chances are that the silver will have gone out as a bananaed up in this direction or in this direction, but it will not be flat. So that's the way to tell if a bowl is an original bowl or something that's been heavily worn and then it's been sent off to the silversmith and he's tip-tapped it up. Now, to give you an idea, thousands of these spoons were made throughout the 18th century, tens of thousands of these spoons, and they survive in quite high numbers. You can go on any of the internet auction sites and you can probably find 100 or 200 of them for sale. But out of 100, at least 50 will not have a good bowl. So straight away we've discounted half of them. Half are gone. The next thing you look for, and arguably this is the most important thing for a lot of people, are lovely hallmarks on the back. And hopefully, although I'll put a picture up, because it is a bit difficult with the phone, but you'll see 4 lovely clear impressions of marks. And in this case, we've got the maker's mark for Starling Wilford, who was down in Grimwade's directory as a large worker, but he was apprenticed to Thomas Allen, who was a specialist spoon maker. So it's absolutely fine that his mark is on a spoon, but always best to check these things. The standard mark, the lion passant, the leopard's head with the crown, which is the London town mark, and a date letter, which is a little lowercase b. And if there's one failing with this set of marks, the B is struck ever so slightly, a couple of millimetres further along the stem. Now, prior to 1781, all spoons, all flatware will be marked at the bottom of the stem, which is a little bit daft, because even though it's the thickest part of the spoon this way, it's also the narrowest part of the spoon. So it presents problems for the assayer when they're striking the marks. So what you're looking for is a perfect storm to happen, where the assayer strikes these hallmarks firstly in the middle of the stem, so they don't go off to one side or they're not turned through 90 degrees, and a lot of them are. You know, these were busy assayers. They weren't bothered about collectors 250 years, 300 years in the future. They wanted to get the thing marked, get paid, and get down the pub. So, don't we all? Wouldn't that be lovely? They basically struck them, and occasionally they're off to one side or higgledy-piggledy. So that way you don't get a full impression of the mark. That's the first hurdle. The second hurdle is how deep they strike them. Now, if you strike a mark very deeply, you can break the stem, you can cause damage, you can cause distortions. The main distortion you can cause if you strike the mark too deeply is you press, flare for every mark the sides of the spoon out. So this edge, this smooth edge, continuous edge that I'm moving my finger up and down, it would be bump, 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 and it would look wrong. So if you strike the marks too deeply and it's returned to the silversmith, he's horrified to begin with, and he thinks, oh my goodness, what's Goldsmith Hall done to my fabulous spoon? So he immediately puts that on his bench and starts tapping all those little imperfections, those raised sections back, so you've got a smooth edge again. Now, effectively, if that's the hallmark struck into the silver, as he's hammering from either side, he's pinching it closed. So you can get a beautiful deep impression that distorts the sides of the spoon, of the stem, and it's hammered back over and it's pinched and it's closed and you can't see what it is, or it's very difficult to see what it is, or you might understand what 2 or 3 of the marks are. So that's no good. The second thing he could do is, because he's done that before and had complaints from the goldsmith, he can strike the hallmark too lightly, so it doesn't get a good deep impression. So what you're basically wanting as a collector these days is a spoon that's been struck with the marks in the right orientation, the full face of the punch on the stem, and not too deep and not too shallow. It is like Goldilocks porridge, I'm afraid. And once you've found the perfect spoon with all those criteria going for it, it then has to survive 250, 300 years without being over polished, without being handled too much, without breaking. So basically, if we say we're looking at 100 spoons as an example. We've lost 50 because the bowl's no good. Decent, readable or good marks. Maybe there are, out of the 50 that are left, there are 10. Well, no, there aren't 10. There are 5. Yeah, there are 5, not 10. There are 5 left. So we've lost another 45. They've gone. So we're down to 5 out of 100. But then, and this is probably only me, when it comes to Hanoverian pattern spoons, maybe there's somebody else that's got a problem. I then always look at the front of the spoon. And if I catch that in the light, you'll see it's got a lovely pronounced rib at the front and a pip. And this can become worn. This can be polished, heavily polished away. And what I love to see is a well-defined rib and pip. And you can see, as I turn it in the light, very nice crisp edges, beautifully defined. So out of the 5 that are left out of the 100, a couple will be a bit worn on the stem. So then you're left with 3. So, 3 out of 100. Well, hold on a minute. Because the last thing, and possibly, again, one of the most important things, is it must have its original engraving on the back of the stem. And there we've got, you hope, beyond hope, for a lovely period crest, because they are wonderful. You might even rarely get a coat of arms, an armorial on the back of a spoon. It does happen. It's quite rare because it's expensive to do. And also you have to be a member of the aristocracy to have your arms put on. We're talking about 300 or 400 families. So not everyone can have a coat of arms. And even then, most people with coats of arms will only have the crest engraved on flatware, unless it's a big basting spoon or something. Or if you haven't got that, if you're just a gentleman, a country squire with no nobility about you, and a bit like me, you just have your initials engraved on the back of the spoon. Now, when it comes to initials, there are 3 types of initials that you can have. Firstly, you can have your own initials. So in my case, I would have an MB on the back, and that would be an end to it. Then more commonly, because often these spoons are wedding gifts, it was a big thing to give a knife, a pair of knives in the 17th century as a wedding gift. That soon became a knife and a fork at the end of the 17th century, and then it became sets of flatware, knife, fork and spoon, and then as whole services became commonplace, you might get a whole set of spoons, you might get a pair, you might get 6. And they will have on what we call marriage initials. And at the top here, you will have 1 initial, and that is the surname. And underneath that, you will have 2 initials, which are the first names of the husband, because unfortunately it's the husband first in these days, the husband and then the wife. And that's those 3 initials with the surname at the top. Those are what we call marriage initials. And then you get the 3rd type of initial, which is what we have on this spoon here, which I hope you can see, are beautifully engraved. And it's 1 set of initials over another, and often, in this case, with a date. And this is a christening gift. So you've got the person's initials at the top that gave it, and often you'll see in between these, the goldsmith will sometimes engrave 2 as well on bigger spoons or on sort of later ones. So you'll have the initials of the person that's giving it and the child who's receiving it. And the date is usually not the date of the gift, it's the date of their birth. So sometimes you'll see a date that's a year or 2 earlier on a spoon, and you think, well, why is that why is that engraved 1724 when the spoon's 1726? Because the child was born in 1724, but the spoon was made and presented 2 years later. So don't let that sort of anomaly in date worry you. It shouldn't. In this case, because this is London 1737, we've got PD to ED 1737. So that's lovely. We know all of that is right and sound as a pound. The eagle-eyed amongst you, the one person that's still awake and paying attention, will notice there's a subsequent set of initials under that. They go, oh, what are those? Those, rarely this happens, those are the initials of another generation of this family. If it were not the same member of this family, or inherited, or had a significance, this would be erased. So that's the thing. That's the thing we don't want to see. We don't want to see erasures, because when people are forced to sell their family silver and it's got their initials or their crest on it, that is removed before the silver is sold. It's all a matter of public appearance. So that's a rare spoon, and those are all the factors that you have to consider